Okay. So I'm going to start off by saying if you are sensitive to DV, if you are sensitive to hearing stories about children, don't watch this one. And then I want to touch on the purpose. So, my brother was a human being. He was a little innocent boy, 9 years old. And not only just 9 years old, special needs. So he already cannot process things the way me and you can. He never saw the world the way you and I do. If you know anyone with special needs, you know exactly what I mean. Special needs people, I believe, harbor an even more sense of innocence, right? So combine that with the fact that he was a 9-year-old child. And I've gotten comments and messages from people who knew Reece when he was a child, and everybody says the same thing. A smile that could light up the room. Goofy, silly, always laughing and joking and playing around. And that's how I remember him. And if you watched episode 1, you know that I always have saw Reece as my protector. I mean, he didn't mess around. Someone was messing with me, he wanted all the smoke. And I think about that. And I think about a little boy who was so adamant on defending his little sister. And I think about the things that he endured, that I had to hear him endure and be helpless, defenseless. So I never got to repay him for all of those times he defended me or came to protect me. But today I do. Today I do get to repay him for that. And another purpose is so many children are failed by the system. And so many children are failed by their parents. People who are put in their lives to protect them. Fail them. We see it every day. And not only is REECE'S story to raise awareness for those types of situations, but also to the injustices, not only in CPS, but in the system that was supposed to hold his abuser and his murderer accountable and did not. This is going to be hard for me to tell. As you can see, I've already almost started crying. But I need people to understand the weight of this case. Emery has gotten to minimize the situation since he's been out. I'm sure even when he was locked up, because his charges that he pled guilty to in the plea deal are as follows: involuntary manslaughter and attempt of child endangerment. For me personally, I'm not sure how beating a child to death is an attempt of endangering them, but hey, what do I know? The point is that when you look him up and you look up his charges and you ask him, hey, what happened? He can tell you anything, because those charges don't hold him accountable to what he really did. And, you know, my mom and others would like to believe the minimized version of events, but people seem to forget that I was there. I remember hearing things. They're burned in my memory. I mean, they traumatized me. I was diagnosed with PTSD when I was 15. So how do I get a diagnosis if this trauma doesn't exist? And I'm done being gaslit, and I'm done being made to feel like I'm doing something wrong. Not only for REECE'S sake, for everyone. I mean, this man walks around. This man walks around free. People have probably had kids around him and doesn't even know what he's capable of. And it's not fair. It's not fair. Nobody stood up for that little boy. clearly my mom has chosen where she stands, and I believe that's a big part. That's the huge part of why the sentence was so lenient. There was nobody speaking out. There was nobody asking questions. His mother was silent. His mother is with the person that did it. So do you guys think that she was advocating for him? Clearly not. Because I'm telling you right now, if that was my son, that man better get life. Because if he doesn't, I'm going to take it into my own hands. So once again, to remember my brother and just think about this poor, sweet little boy going through these things, and the very person who adopted him to give him a better life was letting it happen. And like I've always said, if it stopped there, I would have argued she was a victim. She was manipulated. She was scared. But to stand by this person 20 years later, it's sick. And when we get into the details of the case, you guys will see just how sick it is. So I am going to be reading off some reports, and I'm going to be showing you guys the reports, not so you can have a copy, but just so you can see that I'm reading off of official documents. Nothing that I'm saying is exaggerated. Everything that I'm saying is factual. Anything that I don't know details for fully or I don't remember, I'm going to let you guys know. I don't want to spread any misinformation, and I want to be very clear and concise in the information that I'm giving you and the details of the case. So with that, just some background. My mom had already had my oldest brother when she adopted Reece. My oldest brother has special needs as well. His mom was really bad on drugs and alcohol, so he was special needs. He had to get a liver transplant by the age of 3. I mean, the doctor said that if he walked or talked, it'd be a miracle. And if you know my older brother, you know that he definitely walks and he surely talks. But just to paint a picture, he was special needs. He's high functioning to an extent. Even now he's 32. He cannot be left really by himself. He wouldn't be able to live life on his own. So just to paint a picture of kind of my older brother. And then Reece was born prematurely to his birth mom. And same thing, she did drugs really bad. I don't remember if there was alcohol abuse, but I do know that Reece was born premature, and because of that, he had a lot of medical issues as well. When my mom either met or adopted, I don't remember if he still had the trach when she adopted him, but I know that Reece had a trach, and eventually he had got the trach removed and all that good stuff. But Reece was not a typical little boy. He was special needs. Because of his medical issues, he was very small for his age. He had behavioral issues, all of the above. I mean, if you know anyone in your life that is special needs or that is raising a special needs child, I'm sure that you can kind of understand the picture that I'm painting. But keeping that in mind, both of them were special needs, and my mom adopted both of them. I believe that she had good intentions when she adopted them. She loved those little boys, and that's something that I won't ever take away from her. I think that she did have good intentions. I think that she got wrapped up in a toxic situation and never let go. But that's neither here nor there. So fast forwarding a little bit, I don't remember the exact timeline, obviously, because I wasn't born. So in this portion of the story, I'm going off of what I was told from my mom or from family of how things kind of transpired and played out. But my mom had me, obviously, with my father, and my father, I mean, it's not relevant to this story, but she had me. My dad left around when I was 2. They had broken up prior to that, though, and she had met Emery. Her and Emery were together for not that long, and they weren't even together at first. They were whatever they were doing, and she had got pregnant, and they weren't together when she was pregnant with my younger brother. And then I think that if I remember correctly, I want to say she mentions to me that they didn't end up getting back together or being together until my brother was 6 months old, 9 months. He wasn't a full year. That's all I remember. And that's when they decided that they were going to be together. So to put that in perspective, my brother and I are like 2 and some change years apart. So Emery had been around me from like 2 years to then, like, if you add the 9 months. So I was like probably around 3 to 4 when he came around, which is insane because I look at my little 3-year-old daughter and I was her size when this was like starting. Just for some background, this is from my own memories as well as people who knew my mom. Everyone says the same thing. Your mom was amazing. She loved you kids. She took you guys everywhere. She bought you whatever you wanted. Your mom was amazing. And I remember, like, she did take us everywhere. And I remember just her always, like I said, I mentioned it in my first episode, like her always taking us places and us going to the beach and, you know, being here and being there. She was definitely a hands-on mom. And obviously I was so young, so some of the memories are blurry, but even just speaking to people who knew her, they pretty much all say the same thing. Like, there was just this shift in her when he came around. Suddenly, she no longer has money to do the things we were doing before because Emery's controlling her money. He doesn't want her to spend on this. He wants the money to go to this. He wants the money. Like, they all say that they knew this was a toxic situation because they saw the change in her. So, fast forward, people had witnessed, like, altercations between her and Emery. So, everyone knew, like, that they were toxic together. So, moving forward, we lived in the condo together. And all 4 of us kids shared a room because it was just a 2-bedroom. My mom had owned it. It was just a 2-bedroom home or condo, 2 beds. I want to say 1 bath, unless there was like a half bath downstairs. But I don't think, you know what? I feel like maybe there was off of the kitchen, but don't quote me. So it was me and my younger brother shared a bunk, and then Reese and my older brother shared a bunk. And I remember there was a couple times that I had walked in on some altercations with Emery and my mom and saw some things that, you know, no child should see. But getting to the point of getting back on track to Reese's story, Reese wasn't the only target, and people don't seem to know that. My older brother was also the target, the 2 special needs boys, because special needs kids are not easy to manage, right? Like, if you tell me, a typical 5-year-old, hey, don't do that. For me, okay, cool, I'm not going to do it. But these are special needs boys, so it's not always as easy to parent them. And so oftentimes, it was my older brother and Reese that were caught in the crossfire. I remember this is my own memory, countless times of him taking them into the bedroom, and I would just hear them screaming and crying. Hearing the belt hit them and hearing the screaming and crying. I remember it vividly. I'll never forget it. I remember he would say, he would tell them, you're going to get a whooping. You're about to get a whooping. Let's go. And he'd drag them to the room, and I would hear the hits and the screaming and the crying. And I was 5. Like, what am I supposed to do in that situation? I had nothing. So, and it happened often, like often enough for that memory to be ingrained in my brain. Like, I remember it always happening. I remember always tiptoeing myself because I'm like, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to get taken in that room. So I was always on my P's and Q's, like always like listening to what anybody told me to do because I was scared. I mean, how are you not scared? So, you know, I always knew that he was abusive. I always knew that he was putting his hands on those 2 boys. Can't deny it. You can't tell me he wasn't. You can't tell me that it happened here and there. It was frequent and it happened all the time. And it was both of them. So I want to make that clear. So as time went on, people are noticing things. The bus driver had made a comment because she would notice that, Javon was coming to school, but Reece wasn't. Because when Reece was bruised from these whoopings or beatings, they wouldn't send him to school. So he would stay home alone with his abuser. So who knows what was happening then? But obviously one day it got out of hand. And to my knowledge, this was something that was going on for a few days. That's what the autopsy shows. That's what the police say. That's what my memory says. So I'm going off of those three things. The incident that ended his life was going on for 2 days. And this is where I start to see my mom different. Because how do you not know? You're a pediatric nurse. How do you not look at a little boy, your little boy, and realize he's dying, right? To my understanding, Emery called her and admitted I hit him too hard or whatever bullshit he said. So she came home and Reece was acting weird, but once I get into the autopsy, you'll see how none of this makes sense because he's acting weird, yet there's bruises, bumps, scratches, scrapes all over this little boy that you had to have seen. So for me, the story that I've been told never added up to this, okay? And the story that I'm telling you, I'm telling to the best of my knowledge based on my own memory, other people's memories, and the documents that I have in front of me in my computer. So keeping all of that in mind, I also was there for one of the incidents. I specifically remember one time it got very out of hand, and I remember hearing the punching, the slapping, and I heard him take my brother and throw him down the steps. That's not something that ever leaves your memory. I remember hearing the tumbling down the steps while he's screaming and crying. So it's a memory that, like I said, I wish I didn't have, but I do, and I think about it all the time. I heard that. So my mom came home from work, and she said he was acting weird because he was sick. So she gave him some Tylenol, and he had an accident. So she had put him in the bath, and he collapsed in the bathtub, and that's when Emery called 911. He had an accident because his body was shutting down. He had an accident because he was dying. Because once again, this wasn't just a one incident thing. It was over the course of, the autopsy report shows, and the officer said that over the course of 48 hours, they would say, is how long the incident played out. So keeping all of that in mind, he calls the ambulance. The ambulance comes to get Reece. And you'd think that my mom would have went in the ambulance with her son, but she didn't. Why? Couldn't tell you. I'll tell you my theory, because it was more important for her to be with Emery than it was her child. And if that doesn't speak to how much she puts that man over her children, I don't know what does. Anyways, Reece is pronounced dead 30 minutes after arriving to the hospital. And Emery never leaves the hospital. He goes to jail straight from there and never gets out until he got out in 2018. My mom got out. They took my mom for questioning, let her go. filed the charges. I don't remember the exact timeline, but I know that it took about a year for her to end up going to prison for child endangerment. Now, I want you guys to know exactly what this man did. I want you guys to see exactly what this man did. Because the fact that he could walk around, and if somebody asked him, hey, I see you have a record, what's it for? And he could literally say anything because his charges are so lenient, is insane to me. I want you guys to know the real. So I'm going to show you here on my computer. Okay, so you guys can see I'm here on the document. It says autopsy report, Reece Mushrush, age 9 years old, date, time of death, 12/27/02, date of the time of the autopsy, and 12/28/02. So the autopsy was done immediately. Why do you think that is? Because the situation was so serious that they're like, we need to see what happened to this child. Okay, so I'm going to go through all this with you guys, but I just want you to see, I'm reading off of an official document. Nothing that I'm saying can be fabricated. This is an official document that I'm reading off of. So I just want to go through this with you and help you understand. So this is how many injuries. This is how many injuries here from A all the way down to double V. And that's just from the torso up. This is the sexual assault that everyone likes to pretend didn't happen. Has its own section here. And then this is, let me see. Yeah, and then this is also pertaining to the sexual assault. So you guys see this, A from double V and then A, B, C. So I'm not saying A to double B for theatrics. You guys see, you see how long of an autopsy this is for a 9-year-old boy. Okay? So let me go ahead and go over this with you. I'm not going to read every single injury because we'd be here all day. But I want you guys to understand. So essentially, bruise left forehead, bruise and scab and abrasion left forehead, more scabbed abrasions left forehead. So you have 4 injuries to the left forehead and 2 to the left eyelid and eyebrow. 2 more to the left eyelid and eyebrow. He had an edema, which means swelling. Edema left nostril, so swelling. Abrasions under the left eye. Red bruise left cheek. Red abrasion under left eye. Oval, yellow, red abrasion. Right cheekbone. Brown bruise, right cheekbone. Purple brown bruise, right forehead, purple brown bruise, right forehead. Midline, hairline, there was bruising. Upper lip, busted. Lower lip, swollen. I'm sorry. This is hard to get through. Come on. This was a child. Another busted lip, top left lip. Multiple punk-shaped bruises, left lower lip. So I don't know if he bit his lip in a struggle. Hemorrhaging, midline frontal scalp. Hemorrhaging, midline posterior scalp. Cerebral edema, so swelling in the brain. I'm pretty sure that's what that means. And if that's not what that means, I know there was swelling in the brain. 15 milliliter right subdural hemorrhage, swelling in the white matter, which is nerve damage, bruises on the shoulder. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bruises or abrasions just on the left arm and shoulder. And then, torso, left lateral trunk, so that's here, left chest, contusions, lateral left trunk, irregular red contusion, midline of chest, irregular red bruise, lateral right chest, oval red bruise, lateral right chest, round red bruise, lateral right chest, irregular red bruise, lateral right hip, scabbed abrasion, medial right knee, scabbed abrasion, medial left knee, left posterior rib fractures on ribs 5, 6, and 8, right anterior rib fracture on rib 1. So 4 broken ribs. 3 on the left side, 1 on the right. Pulmonary contusions bilaterally, aspiration pneumonia. So for things that are in terms you guys don't understand, my brother had a brain bleed, he had hemorrhaging, he had 4 broken ribs, and he had nerve damage from how badly he was beaten. And that was just the torso up. So essentially every part of his face and body had bruises or scrapes or scratches of some sort. And there was also sign of struggle in the biting of the lips, and they found signs of struggle as well. Moving on to the sexual assault that allegedly, because I can't say that it happened because he wasn't charged, that allegedly happened, but you can see right here, penetrating injury to anus and rectum. You guys, I mean, it's right here. It's right here. I'm not going to go into the details of the injuries around that, but I'll spare you guys that, but I just want you to know that how the injuries are explained in here, the injuries could have only been caused by the child being penetrated with something. That's the only way these injuries could have been caused, because of, I'm not going to read those injuries. I just can't even stomach it, but the injuries in here, and like I said, I'm not going to read it to you, but like it literally says, it says penetrating injury to anus and rectum. There's a whole section right here that breaks it down. And essentially there's injuries on the outside and the inside. So there's no way that you spin this that he wasn't penetrated by something. This man was torturing this child, torturing him. This wasn't a fucking accident. It wasn't a whooped him too hard. He tortured this child. He's a sick motherfucker. A sick motherfucker. And like I said, have you guys seen, if you've seen an autopsy before, the fact that it even has to be this fucking long, look, page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pages on a baby. On a child, they had to do 9 pages. This was not some accident. He brutally beat that baby to death. I have the facts. We can pretend all we want. I have the facts. And I remember how brutal he used to be to him. I remember how he used to beat on that baby. So we can all sit here and pretend that this didn't happen, but it did. These are the facts. So let's talk about how the justice system failed my brother. It's clearly in the autopsy. I'll actually clarify this as well. It clearly states, cause of death, blunt impacts to head, trunk, and extremities with soft tissue, skeletal, and visceral injuries. So it wasn't I knocked him down, he hit his head, and he passed. It literally says to head, trunk, and extremities with soft tissue, skeletal, and visceral injuries. Yeah. Manner of death? Homicide. Like, this wasn't the way that I've been told this story my whole life, like, was never this. So when I tell you guys that I'm finding this shit out in real time and I'm feeling real feelings about I'm not kidding. I'm not fucking playing around. Like, it's insane. It's insane. And I'm not gonna read through all of these, but I just want you guys to understand that, like, I've done my research and I'm speaking from a place of being educated on what the fuck happened, right? So I have this man's dockets. I have this man's plea deal. I have where he waived his right to trial. I have the documents. I have the docs. I've read up. I'm not pulling anything out of anywhere besides the facts. That's where I'm pulling it from, okay? And I want to be clear on that. Moving into how the justice system failed this little boy. You guys heard what he did. You guys heard what my brother endured. Okay? How do you look at that autopsy report? What about any of that says that was an accident? What about it? Not a thing. Not one thing about that says that was an accident. And how do we look at that? We read it. It says plain as day that he was sexually assaulted, and we never even filed charges on that at all. We act like it never happened. Yeah, make it make sense. So if you look at the plea deal, which I have the plea deal that he signed to plead guilty to involuntary manslaughter and attempt of child endangerment. So let's compare those briefly to the original charges. The original charges were murder and child endangerment. The difference in the severity of those charges compared to the ones in the plea deal are egregiously lenient. You could ask any attorney. In comparison to the two, they obviously just wanted the case closed, literally. Like, they were like, okay, little black boy, nobody to advocate for him. His mom doesn't give a fuck. Great, close the case. Get it off my desk. Give him a plea deal. We're not going to use the resources. We're not going to pull a jury. Let's just go ahead, get it over with. That's what that was, for sure. Can't convince me otherwise. Because then if you might say, oh, like, I don't know, that's a reach. Really? Because you guys don't think that after reading all the things that he did to a child that he shouldn't have to at the very least register as something if he's going to get out? But instead they ignored that completely. So if that's not pure negligence, I don't know what the fuck is. And not only that, let's compare it to the autopsy report. Let's compare involuntary manslaughter to the autopsy report. And I need somebody to tell me, if you're brutally beating the fuck out of a 9-year-old, that's 40 pounds, mind you, because like I said, Reece was special needs, to the point of where you're breaking ribs, you're causing a brain bleed, you're penetrating him with an object, and you're going to tell me that was involuntary? You didn't know the outcome of that? You didn't know that if you brutalized a 9-year-old for 2 days straight, that he could probably pass away? Okay. Yeah. Definitely involuntary manslaughter. And then let's talk about the attempt of child endangerment. That makes no fucking sense from the beginning. How is it an attempt but the child is dead? It's not an attempt. The child is dead. So you attempted nothing. Like, it's not an attempt of endangering the child. The child's life was taken. So if this isn't pure and utter negligence, like, I don't know what is. And I want you guys to let me know, like, if hearing all this now and seeing the situation and I'm laying everything out for you, what do you think? Am I tripping or is that negligence? Like, let's be serious. And then moving down the line, like, once again, you brutalized a 9-year-old boy, allegedly sexually assaulted him, and there's 2 articles? 2? I'm sorry, maybe 3, maybe 4 if you really dig. Nobody cared. Nobody gave a fuck. Nobody raised hell. As I'm reading these reports, some people don't even know what's in them. That's how much people want to fucking bury the shit. And I'm not. I'm not. So next time you guys see Emery Martin around town, I want you to think about what he did to a 9-year-old boy. I want you guys to think about the fact that he only had to serve 12 years. People do less than that for drugs. 12 years around brutally beating a child to death. This wasn't an accident. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. I have the facts. I read them to you. I showed you guys how long that report is. There's no way where you spin that this was oh, whoops. He's a fucking sick bitch. And like I told you guys before, he used to be my older brother too. So there's this narrative that no, he did it. Yes, he did. I remember it. You can't tell me what I saw, what I didn't see. I remember it. And he was abusive towards me too. I told you guys, he locked me in the closet when I was little, knowing that my biggest fear was the dark, and laughed at me while I fucking cried in the closet, and then I pissed my pants. He's a fucking sick bitch. And the fact that he's not in prison right now is crazy. It's literally crazy. And the fact that my mom stands by him is even crazier, to be honest. Like, the whole thing infuriates me. And I think about my little brother and what he had to endure. And I can't even stomach it. And I was his sister. So, moving on. Obviously, he's out now. And obviously, I'm making it my mission to tell his story. And, you know, my brother was a sweet boy. Like I said, everyone who knew him describes him the same. Smile that lights up the room. I mean, all the stuff that I already said in the beginning. And throughout this journey that I've begun, I've been getting signs, whether they're from him or from God, that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. Because for far too long, everyone has let this slide. For far too long, Emery has been able to sweep it under the rug and tell his minimized version of events and have everybody roll over for him. I'm not doing it. And I think that Reece is proud of me. And I think that, you know, I was talking to somebody on the phone the other day, and she was around when some of this stuff was going on, and she said something to me that made me cry then, and I'm trying not to cry now, but she was like, Allegra, you know, Reece is probably up there like, fucking finally. Finally, someone is speaking up for me. Finally, someone is telling my story. Finally, somebody's holding him accountable. And just thinking about that, I mean, it just makes me so sad. Like, these are people that were supposed to protect him. People who he lived with, who he looked up to as his parents. And to be a mother, and to know my mother knew, because like I told you guys before, CPS came to the house. She had to sign a paper that stated she was no longer going to let Emery do that. And Emery had to sign a paper saying that he wasn't going to do it anymore. CPS failed him too. Like, this is a case of failure after failure after failure. From my mom to the system, from CPS. Like, come on, when is someone going to protect this little boy? Everyone just let it happen. Let it slip through the cracks. And, you know, I wish I wasn't 5 years old when it happened, because I would have been raising holy hell. But now I'm an adult, and now I have a voice. And I'm going to continue to use that voice, because my brother deserves that. He always protected me. He always stood up for me, and now it's my turn to repay that favor. And I'm going to rewrite his story into creating a positive legacy, or I'm creating a community for other people who have faced injustices. This is so much bigger than me, so much bigger than Reece. And it's sad. It's sad and it's sick. It is. And once again, I've been finding out things in real time. And, you know, things I never knew. Things that that are hard for me to even believe. Like, listen, I can go on for hours. I really wanted to just get on here and go over with you what I have had to stomach and publicize the fact that this wasn't an accident. How he was able to get off with those charges when now we all know what he did is beyond me. And I will make it my mission to hold him accountable. So, I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode. I'm sorry, I know it was a heavy one, but my brother deserves to have justice. And my brother's memory deserves to live on. And the person that did this to him shouldn't be able to just live a normal life. So, as long as I'm alive, he won't. As long as I have a voice, he won't. And I'm done sparing people. Because, like I said, if it stopped there, great. But the fact that we can stand by somebody and tell this delusional, minimized version of events to even me my whole life makes me sick. It does. And I have a long road of healing through all of this. And I'm really alone in it, right? Like, I don't talk to my mom. I don't talk to my dad. My family, some of my family's upset with me for doing this. I'm at a point in my life where I don't care. Like, what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And everybody fucking knows that shit's wrong. So I'm going to stand on it. I don't care. I'm going to stand on it. I don't care. People can hate me. Think that I'm doing this for the wrong reasons or this and that. I don't give a fuck. At the end of the day, there's no world where I'm going to defend somebody who does that to a child. There's no world where I'm going to sweep it under the rug. Oh yeah, that? No, that was just an accident. It fucking wasn't. You're a sicko that brutalized an innocent child. Like I said in my last episode, I said a Bible verse where basically it said, I think it was Matthew, I don't remember the exact number, I'll have to go back and see, but basically the God's word is, you'd be better off tying rocks around your neck and drowning than facing your judgment if you hurt the innocent. And I can't wait for the day. I have no sympathy for that at all. And being a mother, no way. He wouldn't even have made it to prison. I would have listened. I wouldn't even let a man raise their voice to my child. But that's neither here nor there. The bottom line is that I have a duty, and that's to keep REECE'S name alive and tell his story on behalf of him, because he's not here. He doesn't have a voice anymore, unfortunately. And I'm going to make sure that I'm his voice. So, thank you for tuning in. I know this was heavy. If you guys have any questions or anything that you feel like I didn't address, please feel free to drop them in the comments below. I'll try my best to answer them in a timely manner. I'll do a follow-up video to answer all of them, or maybe I'll even put them in the Q&A for next week's episode of Yaps, her story. But thank you guys for being here, and thank you for your support. I'll see y'all next week.